Good morning, everybody. Wonderful to be here with you all. I must apologize because of technology. The last time I could not be present with you all, but I'm very fortunate that today we are able to be here together. I would first like to thank the Council of Architecture, Amity University, Professor Singh, Prerna, for inviting me here today to share with you some of our practice, our thoughts at this entrepreneurship in AEC sector workshop. I've called my presentation to see our future through our past. I truly believe, as Professor Singh said, that you have to understand the past to really carve out your future. And as entrepreneurs, to recognize that is as important. So as you can see in the center here, I believe we are in the present. And how do we carve our way forward, looking at the past and also calculating the future? A little introduction about our studio. SNK, Somaiya and Kalapa Consultants, is based out of Mumbai. We are a multidisciplinary architecture practice. We do architecture, master planning, urban design, conservation, interior design, graphics, and landscape. However, we're very much driven by research, by site and cultural context, by local materials, and it really is the heart of our design practice. Of course, it is founded by my mother, Brinda Somaiya, over 40 years ago, and I joined the practice over 15 years ago. And a practice, especially architecture, we truly believe is a group sport. It is the work that we do that is reflective of our SNK family. And here you can see us in the office prior to COVID. And of course, our studio as a family continues even today from work from home. And we've been very fortunate not to have lost even one member of our SNK family. We've managed to keep everybody together, and we find ourselves very fortunate. So today, in times which are challenging, really the strength of a studio and its people is really when that comes together. Our work is intrinsically based on an Indian architectural vocabulary, and that spans 5 typologies: water, walls, light, geometry, and material. We use all these aspects in our work. These are some images of our work where we've used these elements. Water, it must be used very sensitively, especially in India, but it can work very powerfully as a nucleus that holds things together, as a connector, and to allow people to wayfind, to direct them towards a direction. Light. In India, light is very precious. As long as we give good shading, we have beautiful light in India. And as architects, it's a real joy to really play and craft spaces using light. Walls, of course, we believe are very important. They connect individual buildings, they give character, the built and the landscape come together. Geometry, an intrinsic part, really the basis upon which we design. And finally, materials. We are very, very blessed in India to have such an abundance of materials, especially across our country. And we're constantly learning about all the variety of materials, the way they have been used. As Professor Singh said, we look back decades and hundreds of years to see the value that is brought in material and how can we utilize it in a contemporary and sustainable manner. We have over 200 built works, and I think the real path that SNK has chosen was to diversify across our practice. We do everything from conservation to cultural spaces, residential, hotels, campuses, education, interiors. So for us, the practice spans a vast typology of works. And this allows us to learn from one typology to another and cross-apply. And learning really is a constant, but it also allows us to gain more expertise and skills in certain areas. It also keeps the practice constantly challenging, which is what we love to do. We started a foundation, Ms. Somaiya did, called HECAR, called Heritage Education, Conservation, Architecture and Restoration. Through this foundation, we bring out a lot of books and publications. We support the girl child. We do believe as architects, our role as professionals has to extend to the community, and we're able to do this community work through HECAR as well. We also put together a conference, which luckily did happen in Mumbai prior to COVID. It was called Women in Design 2020 Plus. It was an international conference. And it really represented this idea that architecture, being the master of arts, encompasses much more than just what we practice. We can learn from photography, film, publishing, law, me being a lawyer in my past life, but certainly there are a lot of skills that we can cross apply and bring to the table. So this was a very enriching experience, hearing from architects from across the world. We also had an exhibition where we showcased photography and also textiles. We collaborated with a village in the south where they were very skilled in textile making, but we actually created a very modern version of what they usually do. And that is what it's about. It's really about a collaboration with the arts and the crafts of that is present in our very vast country and that we're very blessed to have. So to begin with our talk today, to see our future through our past. So, of course, I'm sure you all have been on this workshop, and I always find myself going back to something as basic as a definition. So when I wanted to understand entrepreneurship more clearly, I came across three definitions. The first, which we are all familiar with, an act of being an entrepreneur or the owner or manager of a business enterprise who by risk and initiative attempts to make profit. So of course, we understand that taking on a business or starting a business on one's own is taking that risk and that initiative and planning. The second definition describes activities on the part of both established firms and new businesses. And I think this was very important because for me to share my story with you, I, of course, entered a practice that is established. Somayan Kalapa had been running for 30 years when I joined. So, of course, how does that part differ? But it is very much encompassed within this definition of entrepreneurship. And finally, the one I found very interesting was the modern definition of entrepreneurship, which is also about transforming the world by solving big problems. So often, as entrepreneurs, we're trying to probably remain focused within our area of expertise or develop an idea that is very focused to ensure our business flourishes. But what about that responsibility that extends beyond? The responsibility to our community, the responsibility to our country, the responsibility as a world citizen. So that as well has an impact of us as entrepreneurs as we develop and grow a business. Today, I thought I would talk to you about three aspects of entrepreneurship, of course, intertwined with this idea of sustainability as well, but through three lenses. One is what I believe was watch and work. I spent a lot of the early part of my career working with some amazing firms, and ironically, all were led by women. And I do believe that the importance of watching, observing, and learning from people who have been specialized in their work, who are passionate about their work, there's a lot to assimilate from that. The second is identity. How does one as an entrepreneur build or continue to develop an identity of themselves with the company? You want the company to be a reflection of your beliefs, your passion, your works. So how does one intertwine and reflect that? And finally, a phrase that I have learned at SNK from working with my mother is the idea of live, love, and learn. That if these three things are not intertwined with the work you do, it really does not become the passion of your life that you're able to continue to do. So these are the three aspects that I thought I will share with you all today. I begin with watch and work. And as I mentioned, in my earlier part, my formative years, I was very fortunate to be educated abroad. I studied my bachelor's at Smith College in Massachusetts, and I also had the opportunity to work with Congresswoman Tammy Baldwin, who was a representative from Wisconsin. I actually worked on Capitol Hill, so I wanted to share that experience with you. The second was as a lawyer. I worked as a corporate lawyer in Mumbai with the very established firm AZB and Partners, headed by the lawyer Zia Modi, which was also an amazing experience and an experience that molded certainly my initial ways of working and understanding of how a business really ran. And of course, the later years and where I continue to work today is very much with Brinda Sumaya, who's, of course, mentored me all these years, my mother, my partner in my work, and whom I'm very blessed to have watched and continue to work with even today. So, a quote from Tammy Baldwin: with each passing year and each generation, our country must become more equal, not less. Tammy Baldwin was the first congresswoman to be elected from Wisconsin. She was also gay, the first gay woman to be elected. And when I had the opportunity to work with her, I was studying at Smith College, and she was the only congresswoman on Capitol Hill to hire international students. And the first ones too, it was myself, who was from India, and another boy who was from Colombia. And both of us were the first international students ever to work on Capitol Hill in the US. So it was a very exciting time. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And of course, you worked in this beautiful building, perhaps my love of architecture even emerging then. And one of the jobs that I had to do was when representatives from Wisconsin visited the Congresswoman's offices, I was to take them around the Capitol building and give them the history of Washington, D.C., how it was designed, its urban planning, how it grew, and take them through this entire building, which is an absolutely amazing structure. But what was even more insightful at that age, and for me, was this exposure to government, to law, watching how the US government worked. Our prime minister at the time did come to speak as well in the US, and I was fortunate to attend that. But watching Tammy working, she was breaking glass ceilings at that time by being the first of many. And she fought for equal rights. She wanted to introduce diversity into the government, into the system. And this sense of equality, this sense of justice was really something that I think imprinted on me at that early time, and perhaps why I also graduated into the field of law initially. So Tammy, for me, and those initial years was very important. She went ahead and broke another record by, in 2013, being elected as a senator, and she is today Senator Tammy Baldwin. So an absolutely inspirational person to learn from in those initiative years. Then I completed my law in England and I returned back to India because I always knew I wanted to live and work and really die in India. This is my country and my world. So I returned, and I was very fortunate to have been hired by AZB and Partners, which is a corporate firm in Mumbai. And this, of course, is headed by Zia Modi. For those of you who are aware of Zia Modi, she is one of the most well-known and I would say brilliant lawyers in the legal world. And this quote by her was very interesting to me. You only get one or two chances because of your lineage. The rest depends on your capabilities and prowess. Zia Modi was the daughter of Soli Sorabji, our Solicitor General. She came from, this, of course, very reputed legal family. And she really built her own way as well. So she talks about, of course, growing up in this legal world, but, how that from that background will only take you so far. As I also had the opportunity to join Somaya and Kalapa because my mother had built it, it will only be able to grow so far until, and the rest, as she said, depends on your capabilities and prowess, how you approach it and how you take it forward. She always worked longer than all of us. She would come in at around 10:30, we would all arrive later, and she would probably leave much after everybody left in the office, very late, long hours. But watching her, again, command boardrooms filled with men, where there would be pin drop silence when Zia would speak. And the ability to speak at a low tempo and be heard was very important, that you're able to capture that moment and relay your thoughts. Also, important lessons to listen and not to immediately react and talk. These are legal aspects and training that comes into play. And these were really important in those times for me, because they really paid me good heed in my future profession as well. So watching and Zia work was an absolute privilege, and certainly every experience that one goes through, there is a lot you can take away. So I think this idea of watch and work, no matter where we are working, we can learn from. Finally, of course, where I am today, and where I followed my passion, architecture led to my mother and her firm. Her quote, "I am Indian, and all what I comes from my heritage. It is an intrinsic part of my being and naturally reflects in my work in many ways." Um, I've grown up with two working parents all my life. They always treated my brother and me equal. We had the world as our dreams, and we were allowed to pursue what we wanted. But there were certain aspects that were very clear: hard work, passion, values, integrity, and something Professor Singh talked about, which was this idea of being a very proud Indian. And I think that certainly comes from my mother and my father. Watching my mother work in India, her passion for it, her ability to commit, her ability again to masterfully work with people, and not just within a boardroom, but on the ground, ensuring labor is looked after, ensuring arts and craftsmen are looked after, ensuring clients feel a sense of security. And at the end of the day, I think her greatest strength was always making us feel that we are a team together. And really, all the work that we do is a culmination of an effort. So, these are just some of the aspects that I've had the privilege of working with and continue to have the privilege of working with even today. So as we move on from watch and work, I move on to this idea of identity. And to explain this idea of identity, I thought of this book that I used to read my children when they were younger, and it was called Remarkable Animals. And it was a very interesting book where you had these, it was a flip book, so you could flip different parts of the book and you could create your own animal. And it would come up with very interesting names for the animals. So it was in three parts, as you can see. And you could have for example, the first image, a platypus on the left, a worm in the middle, and a bird on the right. And it would have all these interesting names and unique names and characteristics that would appear. And for me, each of us are individuals where we cannot copy each other. We're all unique, as is our thumbprint. And so when we build our identity, it is an accumulation of all the things that represent us, that come together and must reflect us as entrepreneurs and as the business that we decide to grow. And so what is amazing is we can choose which parts of our strengths and which parts of us we would like to reflect, very much like this mix and match book. So for me, there are two aspects of myself. Of course, there's me as the lawyer, where the training that I received and my initial experience was very much entrenched in research. As the quote says, when you think like a lawyer, you are hardwired to look at problems and solutions from multiple angles, to ask questions and get the information that you need to make different claims and back them up with evidence. So, this idea that everything begins as a point of research, that there must be a very strong evidential base upon which your concept lies, that really is hardwired in my head, as said, and really comes from my training as a lawyer. And then, of course, as an architect, the one thing that I incredibly value is this idea of diversity of work, diversity of usage of material, diversity of working with different typologies of people. So, as the quote says by Eisner, diversity is a great force towards creativity. And for me to be able to utilize that diversity, the diversity of our country and its history and its culture, that's the source of inspiration and creativity that really is able to push us to do well. So, taking these two ideas, I thought I would share some of the projects and how they reflect this idea of diversity and this idea of research through SNK, and how I have looked at it through the projects. So, just to give you diversity through the projects we've done, and why that has been so important, taking you through all these typology of projects. And these are just a handful I thought I would share with you, whether it's a public building or an animal hospital or a residential building or a religious building, a public park. The point is, as a practice, I believe that it is our responsibility that we should be involved in architecture and design and planning at all scales. I think there is a responsibility to the country and the community. So whether you're doing a park, or it could be a footpath, or it could be a massive IT campus, or it could be a corporate headquarters, as an architect, we should have the skill to be able to do that entire breadth of work. And that is really what will make us more valuable and better at our craft. So whether it's Rajabai Clock Tower in Mumbai University Library Building, an absolutely amazing building to work on, but very challenging, a huge conservation project. We had to ensure that the clock remained working throughout the project. We had to build an entire scaffolding and workshop system 70 feet above the ground. There were incredible detailed drawings that had to go into it. There was such a learning of the variety of stone, about how people built. And really, I think that's why conservation is so important. That Mrs. Somaya always says, you don't have to train as a conservation architect. You just have to be sensitive to what has gone before. And I think if each of us just goes and restores, even if it's a small public fountain, or if it is a small, milestone that we have in Mumbai that you're trying to preserve or keep, or an old signage, even doing that is allowing you to preserve something that is part of history. And as architects, we do have that responsibility. So as you can see here, to be able to hear stories through a building is so important, and that is such a learning. And I think being a good entrepreneur as an architect, it is important to be a part of the conservation process, to be a part of public buildings, public objects, and to have that responsibility. The Empire Institute of Learning, this was a very interesting project because this was the space. It was an old shed where they would store gunny bags, and the client wanted to make it into a learning institute, an academic institute. And instead of demolishing the shed, what is the potential that we can see? So, of course, in certain situations, we have to pull back and evaluate what is the importance of that structure in the street at the time. What is the importance of the elements that it possesses? Can it be adaptively reused to what we envisage that the client wants? And certainly that's what we did. We kind of built a structure within a structure. It was immensely successful as an institution because the students had these volumetric spaces, and for institutions that is so important, and yet had these smaller, more intimate spaces where they could go learn, ideate, collaborate together. And you had this brilliant north light being brought in, and this sense again of a street, of being able to walk through a mini campus. So the aspect of being able to develop something very contemporary within an existing older structure. Why not? I think we have to allow ourselves to be creative, to think outside the box. And again, a diversity of projects, being able to do different projects, not saying no to a project because it's small or it's something you've not done before. That allows us to challenge ourselves and think out of the box. Bombay House was, of course, a completely different challenge in itself. Again, ensuring that we could deliver this project in 9 months, talking and building this history of this company and its narrative through the building was very important for us. And also making it technologically very advanced. We had to make sure you could walk into certain rooms just with your iPhone or your iPad and you could control the entire room. Also learning about how the world is changing today, how we're working so differently. So we had these lounges where you could come in for a cup of coffee or a sandwich and you would sit and you would discuss work. And today the working environment has extended beyond the desk. It enters cafeterias, multi workspaces, people golf together, people do activities together. Business has gone beyond the boardroom. So what does that mean and how do we develop as architects for that? And of course, again, conserving that external facade was extremely important. And also down to this, for me, this was so important. We had the Dogs of Bombay House. They've always been a very legendary part of the project and the building. And it was important to rehouse them where they've always been. And it was very interesting because when we used to work at night, and I recall late at night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we had some external work going on, and it was very quiet in that part of South Bombay. And when me and my colleague used to walk around the building at around 2:30 in the morning, the dogs would be with us. And if anybody would even cross the road on the other side, they would bark. And the security people would always tell us that is their job. They protect the building at night and whoever is working there. And it's an amazing part of Bombay House that continues today. We built them a kennel. I went and set up and got their bowls, their food, everything from Crawford Market, set them up. And they very much is their home. And they continue today, even in lockdown, to be looked after and secure the building while everyone is working from home because that is their home. So it is also the characteristics and the history and the smaller narratives of how people live and work within spaces that must be preserved, and how do you allow that to continue in a modern setting. The Parel Animal Hospital, again, another project very much that we learn from. How do we look after our animal community? How can we contribute to upgrading the facilities? We try to understand better the needs and the working of the caretakers at the animal hospital, what they require, the various animals that they used. How can you make the space a little brighter, more cheerful? Of course, this was very much within budget. So you could not be extravagant. So how do you work with basic materials and needs and still give people good functional spaces that can last time, that can be maintained easily? All these aspects being so important. So this also allows us to do work on the ground, be able to help on a completely different level because our country is so diverse. We should be able to build a beautiful corporate office and be proud of it, and build a cow shed and be proud of it. Those are two aspects of our country that goes hand in hand. And it must be these skills that as architects, we must be able to carry at all times and be proud of at all times. It is not just the big projects or the stylistic projects that really give us satisfaction within us. It is these projects which move the lives of people or are able to care for animals or any part of our country that you may be interested in. And it gives tremendous satisfaction to be able to do that. So as you can see, it's fully functioning, of course, and it continues at this time, especially during COVID, to be used a lot. A lot of animals have been abandoned, and it certainly the hospital has been very busy during this time. A hotel, again, a different typology. For this, we brought in the idea of Indian scripts. So we also believe that each client is so different. And I hope that today, when I share my projects today, that you're able to see how different each one is, that they don't look the same. And They should not, because our clients each have their own identity. And for this one, we wanted, it's a business hotel. People come for short stays, but they also come repeated number of times. So we didn't want them necessarily to stay in the same room every time. So we created these different colors of rooms and with graphics from different scripts. So whether it's the Oriya language or Tamil, we use these scripts as backboards and colors so that people could enjoy each typology of room as they visited multiple times. And it was also beautiful to see the building from outside. Sorry, I'll just go back, because as you can see, when you see the facade of the building at night, you can actually see it lit up with the different colors of the room. And it's quite beautiful. You see the red, the green, the yellow, and the blue. So there is interest even architecturally as you move outside that is reflected through the interiors. Here's another image. And as she kind of comes alive in the night, you kind of see these wonderful juxtapositions of color through the glass facade. Another aspect of the practice, which is so important for us, is museums and galleries. This was a exhibition design that we were very lucky to be a part of, called India and the World, A History in 9 Stories, that took place at CSMVS in Mumbai in collaboration with the British Museum. And we were brought in very early on in this project, where the curators were still developing these various sections: shared beginnings, first cities, empire, states and faith, picturing the divine, Indian ocean trade, courtly cultures, shared world, time unbound. And they were telling the story of over 200 objects through all these aspects chronologically. And as designers, and knowing that we were appealing to an Indian audience, which is so diverse, an Indian audience who is sometimes not educated, they come from the villages, they cannot read. How do you explain and take them through a journey with a very high density of objects? And we felt in India, color is a very strong way to do this. And we would chart the path of a visitor through color and through form, so that he knows that there's a story that is changing as you go through these spaces, and that orally then those stories can be told and the objects can be appreciated. This idea of using color had not been done in this way before for a gallery. And the British Museum and even some of the stakeholders were concerned, because this kind of idea of using color against objects is not common. And it's usually a sense of neutral, and you let the object speak for itself. But there was great trust placed upon us as designers, and we were permitted to go ahead with this idea. And it was tremendously successful. And as you can see here on the left, we kind of began in the Indus Valley with these hand axes that were millions of years old. And it was as if you were traveling through the caves. And in the distance, you can see that hint of brick appearing, this idea of Mohenjo-daro coming up. So again, this, I think our inbuilt architect and historian and archaeologist comes to life. And on the right, you had empires, where you were talking about the great kingdoms and the great kings, Charlemagne and Akbar. And so this idea of this royal red showed a great expanse of color. Again, state and faith, where you're juxtaposing different religious figures. We used a very cooling color, the sense of neutral. And there were such amazing stories to be told. As you can see in the distance, you can see a Christ, a wooden Christ, juxtaposed with a stone Ganesh. And this was a story about India and the world. So one would assume the Ganesh was from India and the Christ was from the world. But to learn more about the object, the Christ is actually from Goa and the Ganesh was brought in from Indonesia. And you learn about the history of those two countries and how it's intertwined in its religious story as well. And this is really the richness of our country and what makes it great. So, you're able to tell these stories, and then you come to freedom, where we decided to stark white, as you can see Gandhiji's bust and the charkha. And on the left, you can see a mesh. We decided to have a mesh in certain places where you can see one object to the other, but also to reflect this idea of being incarcerated, about being jailed, this idea of how people had to give up their freedom in order for us to have ours. So there are all these very subtle plays of design that have been intended to support the larger narrative that is being told by the curator, never to overshadow it. And at the end, of course, we had this idea of Time Unbound, um, made by a brilliant artist called Talur, where he made this sculpture of Shiva, and it was ensconced in concrete and money. And he talks about how Shiva is the god of infinite, and how today man is only obsessed with this idea of building and money, and whether this is going to be the end of us and this will be our future and our eternity. So it's really an object that makes us question where we are today. And what we thought is we backed the object with a mirror, so you could see the object an infinite number of times. That is reflective of Lord Shiva, this idea of infinity. So again, for us, this idea of hearing the narrative, about researching, about understanding it, and then designing was so important. And no project is possible without an incredible collaboration and trust. And I think at the end, the British Museum director on the left, you see there, really complimented this idea of the design, saying that we understood our audience and we were able to tell that story of 1.7 million years, 210 objects, over 9 stories in one exhibition. And of course, below there is our amazing SNK team, with whom without none of this would be possible. A religious building, Sanpada Church, a very small building, a very constrained site, and a wonderful example here of how can you build a contemporary religious building by even putting the cross on the external wall. It is really the heart of the community. We also had a cross actually outside on the landscape wall. You can see it from inside the church, using very basic materials, making it a space of spirituality, calmness, and tranquility, but learning how to build within constrained budget and time and space. And this really teaches us the idea of designing with sensitivity. It allows us to learn about communities, and it allows us to give back in our own way and contribute. TCS Banyan Park is a collaborative project with the architects TWBTA in the US, Todd Williams and Billy Sien. They are responsible for the Obama Library today, and I would say are one of the most brilliant international architects that we have been blessed to have. We were very fortunate to work with them on this campus, and why I feel it is so diverse and important, what it gave SNK was the ability to understand how to work on an international scale and level. Millions of square feet, but the importance of detailing, of coordination, of an international level of drawing. And today we can very proudly say that we're able to deliver on par with any or most firms on an international level. World One was another such opportunity with PCF that we had. And for us, it's about learning new skills all the time. How do you build tall buildings? That's why we really went into this simple question. How do you do it well? So what better way but to learn from the best? PCF has been doing this for decades around the world, and we had this opportunity to learn. And for us, certainly, a huge task, again, technically to understand, whether it was from the technical studies of the sway of the building, the ballasts that have to be placed on top, whether it was the facade design, whether it was the MEP structure, firefighting, vertical system, transportation packages that went out in incredible detail. This was the process of learning how to do these projects and how they work in other countries, and how does it apply and work for us, and how can we do it well, and if not better in the future. And from there we come down to something like Colaba Woods. Parks, such an important part of every city in India today. It used to be a garbage dump, where it was then decided that an opportunity would arise to convert this garbage dump into a park for the neighborhood, and really became the heart of the neighborhood when the park was going to open, they had said that the municipality would charge 10 rupees for people to enter. And Mrs. Sumaya fought this and said, absolutely not. You will not charge people any cost to enter this park. It should be free. And they said, we are so concerned that people might not look after the park. They will destroy certain parts of it. They might ruin the lights. And once the park opened, it was the poor community that looked after it, that made sure things were kept properly. There was a wonderful study corner where all the slum children would come and study in the evenings, because that was the one place that was quiet and you could get electricity, light at least, for them to read. And we must remember and trust people that as communities and as individuals, they are stakeholders. If you make them stakeholders, they will look after it like their home. But if we begin to gate communities and build walls and segregate our cities, we are only going to be hurting ourselves. We must not be afraid of one another. We must ensure that we look after one another and trust one another and build for one another. And that really is the future. Last one is Malabari Hall. This is a beautiful little jewel that sits in South Mumbai. It is run by Seva Sadan Society. It has a brilliant history of looking after underprivileged women and girls. And it was a small restoration project specifically for their Malabari Hall, where they have all their events. They also are able to generate little extra income for the children by renting out this hall to the community. So a lot of weddings, functions happen here in this hall for the community. And it was such a gorgeous little building. And you had these group of girls who were so proud of their space, because of course, you know, for them, this is their home, their school, their performance space. And for them to experience this building in all its glory was so important. So here is a wonderful picture on the left when Malabari Hall opened in the 1900s, and on the right with Mrs. Advani when she opened the hall after it was restored, and with all the girls there who had done a brilliant performance at the hall. And, you know, this little project was recognized and won the 2020 Award of Merit by UNESCO Asia Pacific. So again, it's a small gem of a project, and its significance is as important as a large public building, because its significance in the social fabric of the community, what it has stood for, how it has functioned, is as important. And it is important for us to also ensure that these smaller buildings are able to get a new lease of life so that they're able to serve their neighborhoods and areas. So the second part of identity that I wanted to talk about, the first part of obviously talking about all the diverse projects, some of them which I shared with you. And the second part is me as a lawyer. So I thought I would share one project. How do we approach all those projects that you've seen? We take the same approach irrespective of the size or scale of the project. And it really starts from this idea of research, because that's where we really get our inspiration. And that's how we present to each and every one of our clients. So I thought I would share just one project here with you, which is the TCS campus in Indore, and how a single project at SNK evolves. Campus planning and designing for this leading information technology company, we wanted to bring in a very contemporary vocabulary, but it was also important to blend a local culture and aesthetic and make sure that there was innovative intellectual and social exchange. So often this is what we see as architects. It's really, sometimes we get blank canvases. There is nothing. And even when we see a piece of land like this, we have to tread the land lightly. We have to be sensitive. Just because it is an open piece of land and it seems there is no context really when you look around. So you don't want to just go and build a pie in the sky. You have to continue looking for context. And so when we looked at our location in association with the larger geographical site, we realized how closely the Narmada River was running. The Narmada River, also referred to as Reva, the river that forms the traditional boundary between North and South India, one of our most important rivers. And then to understand the client, our client was of Indian origin. He was a powerful player in the information technology and business solutions. And they were really looking at the future, that how do they build this vision of the future for their company. So they were really looking at a digital river. They're really the heart of IT. So when I took those words, Indian, powerful, and future, it was amazing how similar it was to our rivers. Our Indian rivers have been worshipped across the subcontinent. They're extremely powerful natural forces. They power electrical power. They have immense strength. And of course, they are our future. A river is always moving forward. It never moves to the past, and it represents change. It represents progress, and it represents growth. So we let a river shower its banks with a spirit that invades the people there. And we protect that river, knowing that without its blessings, the people have no source of soul. So for us, a river is also a spiritual aspect. It connects us. It gives us that sense of blessing. Sage Agastya called Narmada the endower of bliss. It was believed that while you gain salvation by bathing in the Ganga, you attain it by merely seeing the Narmada. And of course, this idea of parikrama, that if you circumambulate the river, you have this sense that Narmada is the cycle of life. So we took this idea and studied the Narmada, how it works, what is its significance, and superimposed it on the site. And we divided the master plan into three distinct courses, much like the Narmada flows. In the upper course, the source of the Narmada is a small tank known as Narmada Udgam Kund, which is located in the Amarkantak Hills. And it's a very dense, if you see the buildings, you can see the image, a dense set of buildings, beautifully in this Kund. Then as she moves down at Jabalpur, she passes through the very famous marble rocks between the Vindhya and the Satpura range. And you can see how sharp and angular and cut, yet so beautiful these rocks are. And then it ends and opens up into the Gulf of Khambat. It's kind of flowing out into this delta. So when we looked at our master plan as well, not only did we want the forms to reflect this, but also some of the landscape that would hold those buildings together, because buildings can just be individual, but it's really brought together by the landscape, the kind of open flow between, the in-between spaces, as we call them. So you had the Kund and the pavilions in the upper course, the jagged walls of Jabalpur in the middle course, and then that lower course of the delta opening up, which we would have the mounds. So in the upper course, the landscape was designed with a central Kund and this idea of this density of buildings rising up from all sides that are very reflective of the temple kunds at the Narmada source. So here, as you can see, our three-dimensional rendition of it was, of course, this density or the tallest buildings, all dense around that central kund where people could come out. And then in the middle course, which includes a podium, which is the middle access of the river belt, we wanted the buildings here to be closely spaced and to have these inclined walls that were inspired by Beraghat. So this idea of this inclination, this roughness coming in, that you're kind of moving through this organic path of structures. And then finally, in the lower course, where the ground level grows more flatter, we have a lower set of buildings. So we reduce the height to just G+2. And it kind of merges into the landscape that are mounds, or they're very reminiscent of the undulating hills. And so here again, this idea of building these structures next to rocks, next to open plains, and the land just opens out. And this was a 100-acre piece of land. We could very easily have just densified the entire thing, but we only utilized 60 acres, and that too in this format where there would be a balance of the built and the unbuilt spaces. So as you can see here through the three-dimensional model, it really coming into life. Of course, you had this sense of the BPO or IT blocks, and you had a lot of ancillary facilities. So at the Amarkantak point, we had a very dense set of buildings, which had all the IT offices. And then in the middle set of buildings on the offshoot, you had some of the support facilities, such as the business center, the cafeteria. And with these buildings, we could really have a little more density for them to be closer. And then as the buildings at the end open up, you had some more of the IT and BPO offices. And then again, us getting into the landscape, it was very important that the landscape really be an architectural extension of the buildings, just in geometry, in material, in form. And so with the striated steps that come down into the Kund, or the long landscape walls that really go from the build form and merge into the greenscape, was very important for that continuity to happen. Here you see the actual development of the buildings. You can see the drawing detailing that we went into, again, very budget-driven project. So how are you able to convince a client to retain a sense of the architectural form, but still ensure that you're in budget? And then you had this final master plan that really overlaid so many layers. You had, the central river spine view, which was the landscape superimposed with the buildings, again superimposed with all the infrastructure that we had and the services. So an extremely complex set of requirements that really had to be layered and carefully put through. So then as you go into the detailed drawings, just to go from macro to micro, right from the Amarkantak top course, you wind your way down, you can see these little breakout spaces of different sizes, down to how we wanted the mounds, the group of trees, the connectors between buildings, so that when it's hot or when it's raining, people are able to cross through. You had the central section as well, and we wanted there to be certain points where people could congregate together, could come together. IT parks, you have to have as much outdoor spaces because people are in front of their screens a lot of the time. And in order to relax the mind, to come out into a breakout space is extremely important. And then, of course, breaking out into this delta right at the end, culminating into this beautiful expanse. And as you can see, future expansion, we suggested that they just plant trees there, build an orchard. So eventually just natural vegetation grows there, that the campus terminates into the sense of the land as is. Sustainability, of course, essential across the board. Whether you have landscape, it must be thought out and in a very controlled way. You don't want to be spending lots of money on watering grass. You want to make sure that whatever water bodies are there, that they look as good empty as they look full. Don't we so often go to spaces where you see these huge water bodies that have no water? So what we ensured was, when there is no water, if there is a dry season, or for example, at the moment, if the campus parts of it are empty, not being utilized, the water body can be emptied and it can be used as an amphitheater. It does not always have to contain water. So the point is, how do you use a duality of things besides all the things that we are taught and to do as architects, as our training, whether it's water landscape use from the STP, that it's shallow, that rainwater harvesting pits are created, that there's barriers using trees for dust and noise pollution. These are all the things, of course, that we apply. But beyond that, how can we be innovative to ensure those other aspects also put in? And of course, that extension into the interior, this idea of all the elements of the geography, the materials, whether it's the colors, the gray, the rust, the mushroom, it all percolates into the interiors. So you can see there right from the details of the elevations, and bringing in arts and crafts. To us, this is absolutely primary in any part of India that you work. So we ensured that we researched the local arts and crafts. How could we incorporate it in a modern way, and request the client to ensure that local people could come and adorn the walls in this way? So if I had to show you 10 completed pictures, which people very often do in presentations of the projects, you would often see pictures like this, where they would show you how the project looks after that central landscape, all the connectors as it looks finished. And these are probably the 10 pictures that we submit for so many of our submissions, whether it's for clients, for awards, for presentations such as this. You will see these processes and pictures of how the campus has grown today. But today,
at the heart of India, amidst great culture and heritage,
I also wanted to share this video.
The cleanest city of India.
I hope that you all can hear the sound.
Of education and economic capital, Central India, Indore has always been the attraction for the finest talent in the country. Welcome to the vibrant campus of TCS, situated in the most livable city of India, that is Indore. So let's have a look at the TCS Indore campus. Sprawling across 100 acres of land, the world-class facility is inspired by the flow of Narmada, and it is divided into three parts. The upper block represents the origin of Narmada, that is, the Amarkantak Hills. And as the Narmada flows across the rift valleys, we have a similar structure of slanted middle block, which depicts the Beda Ghat, the Marble Mountains. And the lower block represents the calm of Narmada when it reaches to the Gulf of Khambat. The facility has a fully functional, state-of-the-art, multi-purpose hall, information resource center, gymnasium, two cafeterias, and an amphitheater.
Indore is a perfect place to live, with great work-life balance, perfect connectivity, short commute to work, and low cost of living. But what I like most about Indore is it's an absolute paradise for a foodie.
So great food is not the only reason for happiness in TCS Indore. We believe in next-gen workplaces and our agile environment aid in this regard. So the way we are conducting a living agile session with our customer, it is helping them a lot. We take problem statement from the customer, are having a one-day full session with them, and the outcome is the expected result, and it shows the true value of agile.
Indore is the only city in India to have both IIT and an IIM. In fact, highest number of recruitment in IT industry happens from Central India. Engaging workplaces will keep employees happy and helps to create a positive environment for everyone to grow.
So I wanted to share all that with you. That was, of course, made by the client, but the story that we created has become their story. And that's what's so important, that you're able to design a space that is reflective of their story and that they are proudly able to tell that story to others when they show their spaces. The other aspect I just wanted to touch on in this project is the process, which we don't often see. And this was an immense project, and to be able to be a part of its development, this is really what is our work as architects. Yes, we see those 10 finished images, but that's not often how it is. There are so many ground realities. There are so many challenges. This project went up in phases, and it was a regular coordination of a huge team. One of the most amazing things was to see the scaffolding. It was like a density in its own sense. It was such a large scape that it felt like its own structure. Watching the detailing develop, coordinating on site, we had a huge team. This was just one of our on-site meetings when we used to go on site and travel across each building, working with, massive coordination effort. And you would watch the structure rise, watch it emerge. And of course, the labor, they were so proud of what they built. At the end of the day, yes, we design, we conceptualize, we coordinate, we periodically visit, but those that build with their hands, that is the real pride of watching it come to life. And of course, we visited all the camps. We ensured the workers were well looked after, clean water, hygiene, ensuring that the women were segregated, also had their facilities, any creches if required. So these were very important aspects. And you had women on the site, which was very exciting to see as well, in their boots and their helmets. And they would come and work as hard as the men. And we're trying to ensure that they can be upskilled to do as much or more as the men can do on site. So of course, those are the aspects of the projects, and you watch the details come to life and the process, which becomes such a heart of it all. And then when it's done, you have a moment to reflect at the entire process. And you often wonder as an architect how you got through it, because there are so many moments that are so challenging that you have to just work through it. Arts and crafts being such an integral part, and of course the team. This is really who made it happen. It is not a single person. It is not a single being. It is the cohesive effort of an incredible group of people that come together to make these projects happen. Now, to end really quickly, my last section, is live, love, and learn. As the great Confucius says, choose a job you love, and you will never have to work a day in your life. For me, it was a long path, and I have no regrets about my journey working through as a lawyer because it taught me so much. But it really ended up being a job that I love, where I felt I never had to work a day. And working with Miss Sumaya, these are some of the words that all of us at the studio have learned from her. But just some of the things, aspects that I would like to talk about perhaps is passion, that you wake up every day and you are passionate about what you do, that you're empathic. And I think today with COVID, empathy is really what is needed. But even prior to that, as architects, whether it is empathy for a community, empathy for labor, empathy for people who are working within our studio, empathy for a client who's going through a difficult time. I think as an architect, that's very important aspect to have. Team effort, of course, it is always about the team. Humor. Humor is essential for architects. If we don't find a light side to it, I think all of us together, why what makes work joyous is architecture is a service industry. We have to be with each other, and being with each other, that humor is a natural part of it. Guardian, being a guardian of the built and unbuilt, certainly a philosophy of SNK. Today, in the India that we live in, as architects, we have to be the activists. We have to be the guardians of what is going to be left behind for future generations. And we have to voice and be brave and talk about protecting and ensuring that we are able to represent and protect what we have. Ethics. Ethics in our industry is another aspect that I feel the future generations will really put forward. Being transparent, being honest, it will allow us to elevate each other as an entire industry together. The only fee that we must earn as architects is the one that our client is paying us, and we must not be afraid to say that. And so often, when I have raised this topic in various forums, I have very quickly been shut down. But I do think it is important, and it is something that we as Indians must put forth. And as an industry, we must now be at the forefront of this. Punctuality certainly seems like a small point, but extremely important. I think for me as a lawyer, it really was important. And even now, to be on time, 5 minutes early is a question of discipline, and it's a question of respect for other people as well. Hard work, as we all know as good Indians, there is no substitute for hard work. And I don't think that phrase will ever go out of style in India. Curiosity, one of the greatest things Ms. Somaya has shown me, even now, her curiosity for work, for life, for projects, she has passed that down to all of us. And that is curiosity that must continue. And finally, patience. As architects, that's one of probably the most important things. Some projects take years. Some projects are the most grueling. For all of us as professionals during COVID, the amount of patience that we need, because of course, a lot of it is expected of us, a lot of pressure is put on us. At the same time, the amount of pressure we are taking on ourselves is huge. So we must have patience. Sustainability comes from that: cultural, social, economic, and environmental. We must be able to balance all these aspects. We must be able to create a sense of place, a cultural landscape. From that, we must have a creation of identity, branding. We must have economics balanced. You must be able to be conservative as a business owner, not be spending, learn to invest back in your company, always be environmentally sensitive. So all these aspects really, through working with companies, you are able to learn and develop. So finally, to end on a little bit of humor and lightheartedness, that is me in the center holding my mother's bag from the very early years, and I continue to do that today. She really taught me about being an activist, and the only way to do that is by traveling our country. What amazing architecture and history we have in our country, and it is in all parts. This is something we must learn about. Only if we are made aware that we learn it, we learn to respect it, we learn to love it, and we learn to protect it. These are the things we must be and learn and continue to pass on as entrepreneurs. We both studied from Smith College. We're very fortunate to have that foreign education. and it gave us the ability to look beyond and respect other professions. At a liberal arts education, you're able to do astronomy, mime, economics, astrology, and really that's a gift. Today, to be able to work, you can see Ms. Sumaya on the left there in the 80s, and me today, well, this must have been about maybe 8-9 years ago. But again, surrounded by that group of men, surprisingly, we're still a few women in the architecture profession. And I urge women to partner if you need to, but to continue rising. It's not an easy profession, but it is one that gives back so much. Of course, there are so many moments in architecture where you find yourself pondering. In the days of Miss Sumaya, 1991, there were no electronics. Of course, there was the magazine. And on the right, as I'm waiting on a site, we have our good old phones today. So we're able to keep ourselves occupied at 2 o'clock in the morning. Travel, we very much enjoy traveling as architects. It's the greatest gift we have from all parts of the world to our country. And of course, being on site, all the aspects of being on site, make sure we're protected, to be outdoors, it is all a gift. To learn from our masters, as we can see here, whether it's Jeffrey Bawa that we had a visit in 1995, I accompanied my mother there, of course, Professor Doshi, and of course, the late Professor Korea. I mean, these are the greats that we can read and learn and aspire from. And of course, this is Todd and Billy who are doing the Obama Library, that internationally, collaboration is the future. We can collaborate within our country, we can collaborate with one another. And this is also the sense of the future of architecture and us as entrepreneurs. Let us not be afraid to share. That is probably our greatest gifts. There are moments when we are in a state of shock as architects. Have we forgotten something? And there are moments of exhaustion and complete humor that must be there as we work through the hours. Teamwork, we must go beyond architecture. We must look at books, research, photography. This is also our passion. And in architecture, it never stops. We work on the floors, we work on sites, outdoors. You can see Ms. Sumaya here in all her different hairstyles, right from being on site to a hard hat. And finally, family. Where does family come in? Our personal families for Ms. Sumaya and me. This is really our strength, the people who allow us to be the people we are today in business, and our SNK family, as important, who really support us to make the studio and do the work we do. And finally, our friends, those who influence us. On the left are my friends. One is in PR, one is a filmmaker, and one is in advertising. And together we're all creatives. I learned from them. On the right, Miss Sumaya is surrounded by 3 architects. So, it is also your friends who share that knowledge with you, who inspire you to push and do more. And finally, at this very difficult time during COVID, you can see Miss Sumaya and me there, and I compare it to Star Wars, which I love. And I say, "Are you my mummy?" And it's actually, "Luke, I'm your father." All of us with those huge masks and our visors, etc. But work has to continue. And, it is difficult times, but that is the path of an entrepreneur. You have to be able to face all the challenges as you learn from it. As Ms. Sumaya told us, we have been through an emergency, we have been through cyclones, now we are going through a pandemic. This is the path of an entrepreneur, and this is what will make us stronger to move ahead. So we must live, love, and learn. And I conclude, the path to our future passes through our past, and the present is the time to act. Thank you so much.